Okay.
Yay! Welcome to the vlog. Today's guest is Tina Greenbaum. And within my community, if you're part of my platform building community, we've been talking a lot about breakdowns, breakthrough, fear, and mindset, how to really, clear yourself of all those things and actually optimally doing it within the moment that you're actually having that breakdown, because that's really where the gold is at. Is catching yourself in the middle of it and saying, oh, I need a second opinion, I need help, I need to shift the conversation. And that is what Tina Greenbaum is really good at. She's a licensed clinical social worker and an optimal performance specialist and a dynamic workshop leader, now living in the Bay Area of San Francisco. Throughout her extensive career of 34 years, she has been a pioneer in combining traditional psychotherapy with body awareness, energy psychology, neuroscience, and spirituality. Wow, that's a lot. She brings the latest discoveries in neuroscience with the ancient traditions of the East, as well as the best of West learning theory. She works with intergenerational entrepreneurs and business professionals, teaching them high performance skills necessary to elevate their presence in a challenging and pressure situation. And aren't we all under challenging pressure situations these days?
We are.
Welcome, Tina.
Thank you, Juliet. This is fun to be here. My
Good.
actually.
Tell us a little bit about, that was like a pretty big biography. Tell us what you do day to day with your clients.
So depending on who the clients are and where they are, I always start with where somebody is at. So, and what it is that their particular goals are. So let's just say that I'll take one of my typical clients, okay, who was a business leader. I lived in New York for a long time, so I worked with a lot of very high-powered, high achievers. And this one woman in particular was this vice president of a high-end fashion industry company. And it was also a very misogynistic company. And this is a couple years back, so this was before the, Me Too kind of thing. But she just didn't know what to do. She just didn't know what to do. And she wasn't used to not knowing what to do. She was, again, very accomplished and a good problem solver. So we started to look at a lot of the issues that she had to deal with. This was on a one-on-one basis. Sometimes I deal with groups of people and sometimes one-on-one. This was a one-on-one client. And we looked at the problems, and then we looked at the options that she had in order to deal with. So in other words, I consider myself a pretty good problem solver. And so that's what I help my clients do a lot. So let's look at it from as unemotional situation as we possibly can. We'll come back to the emotion, but let's look at the problem. And so if we handle it this way, what are likely the outcomes that could come from if we do it this way? Right now we'll try it another way. And then we go around with as many different options as possible so that the blind spots that we have, and we all have them, are now no longer blind. They're just sort of out there. Oh yeah, I could walk into this minefield. Am I prepared for that? And I could walk into this, I could walk into that, I could walk away, I could, until she was able to make what I call an informed decision, not an emotional decision, even though the emotion was acknowledged, but she had time to sit and think about it and calculate and what was the best way for her to move on. And so that's a typical kind of situation. And what I like to do is I like complex interpersonal relationships. And because, as I said in one of the pitches that I gave at CEO Space, one of my clients called me her Windex. So that she would come in a fog and then she would leave. Oh, I see. And I think we all need somebody to help us see, because, as I say, the unconscious by its nature is unconscious. And we can only see as far as our vision has allowed us. And even then, even when I get into a situation where it requires a big decision, I'll call my trusted advisors and say, okay, so what haven't I seen? What am I missing here? And that's kind of the role I play for a lot of people.
Oh, that's really great. You and I started this because I was talking to you about the fear and sabotage that I see out in my platform building marketplace. So many people write that book or create that program, and then they decide, okay, I want to sell it, but nobody knows who they are. And we've talked a lot about how you can address fears like that, the fear of being seen, the fear of success, the fear of failure.
So what I like to say is there's only so many themes, like fear is a theme, but there's an infinite variation on them. Okay, so it's really important for somebody to know and be able to pinpoint what is it that I am very specifically afraid of. So you named a bunch of things, right? Fear of success, fear of failure. Now, you may be that person that's afraid of success, and the next person may be that person who's afraid of failure. They're different. They're different. So what I like to do is I like to teach people how to connect the mind and the body, because the mind and the body work together. And in our culture, we are what I call walking heads. We think and we think and we think and we think and we think, and we go around in circles and we create loops, but we frequently can't find the way out of it. So I like to introduce people to the concept that you have a body, and within your body is information. So let's just say, for example, let's say I notice, because that's one of my big words, is without the judgment or anything, I just notice. I notice that when I go to write this email to this person who is a very high-end person who I would like to be in front of, I go to sit down at the computer, and then I just get distracted. Something comes along, and there's an email that comes along my way, and then I just go over there, and then I notice the next day, well, by Friday, I started this Monday, by Friday, I have not written that email. Okay? So let's just say that's a typical scenario. So I might sit with that person or teach, even if you're in a group, teach you, okay? Let's go look at what it feels like when you go to sit down at that computer. Just that moment. Just that moment. And then what do you notice? Well, it could be a thought that says, I don't want to be here. It could be a feeling in my stomach, where I start to get a little queasy, or I start to get a little anxious, or my heart starts to palpitate, or I get, something in my shoulders that start to bother me. So I'm going to ask you to just stay there. Just stay there and just notice. And again, what we frequently want to do is we want to get that feeling of discomfort. We want to get over it. So that's why we walk away. I don't like this feeling, even though I'm not even aware of what's going on. I don't like it. And so I'm just going to walk away. And then it goes into that abyss of, I don't know why I just don't write this email, but now we're going to take it and we're going to just dissect it, just sort of like under a microscope. And that's kind of what mindfulness is. People have a lot of different ideas about mindfulness. It's very big these days in terms of a term, but it's an ancient practice. And as a psychotherapist, in my book, we can't change anything until we're aware of what it is that we even want to change. Just like in a business, we can't, I'm not making the money that I want. Well, I have to analyze it. Why am I not making that money? What's gone wrong? What's my part? What's not my part? And so on. So I do the same thing with fear. We're just talking about fear. Okay, so I notice that I get this queasy feeling in my stomach. All right, I'm going to sit with that a little bit, and then I'm going to ask you a question. Is that a familiar feeling? Have you felt it before? Not just around this email, but let's just kind of look and then the mind body has its own brilliance and wisdom. And once we put our attention and our intention on a particular body part that has a lot of emotional molecules, it begins to start to awaken the memory and waken the feelings and waken, oh yeah, I remember when I was in college, blah, blah, blah. And I'd sit down to write a paper, for a teacher, and I had to, my grades really depended on it and blah, blah, blah. I remember. And we begin to start to see the train of the pattern. So this is very unique work. And that's why one size does not fit all. Mm-hmm. And it can be delivered in a group, but I kind of, again, you and I were talking a little bit about, I'm really equipped to take people to places that traditional executive coaches are they're not trained. They're not, because sometimes we get into places that open up very big things. And I find that kind of dangerous when we're talking about fears and things, that if you don't know how to sort of measure that, or know how to put people together, or how far to take them, or what they can handle or what they can't handle, it gets into a little, kind of not so great territory. So when we're dealing with fears, they may be very simple or they may be very complex. And if you haven't done the work, or you haven't been with somebody that can really guide you there, we're operating where the unconscious is moving us rather than us moving it. Mm. So I use the example a lot of times. If you would imagine that these are metal filings, right? And so we know that if you put a magnet under the metal filings, the magnet will move the filings, right? Well, in our culture, this is what we think is everything, right here on the top. And yet this is the unconscious that is driving the train.
Oh, wow. That's a great way to think about it.
Right? Well, actually, I got it from Deepak Chopra. But I've used it for years and years and years and years. Okay, so depending on how great you want to be and how much you want that book out there and how much you want people to notice you, you have to do the personal work, because pushing yourself beyond our comfort zone, okay, our natural tendency is to run away. Mm-hmm. So then, okay, so how do we kind of keep challenging ourselves without going overboard? Right? So in yoga, if any of you have done yoga, okay, there's the point where you're just out on your edge of discomfort. So if you ask too much of yourself, what's going to happen?
It's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt, and you're not going to be able to accomplish it. Right? Okay, you're going to go in overload. You're going to go in overwhelm. Mm-hmm. If you don't ask anything of yourself, nothing happens. Right? We don't grow. So it's learning how to be on that edge of discomfort, okay? Because we cannot go any faster than our nervous system will allow. So many of us high achievers, me included, thank you very much, okay? Aspiring, always aspiring and wanting to thrive and grow, okay? We have to be aware of what we can handle at any one time. Mm-hmm. And if we ask too much of ourselves, excuse me, then we turn around and go the other direction.
It's interesting that you use that yoga analogy, because I think as type A personalities, we tend to get in a yoga class and all of a sudden we're being our competitive selves. And
yes,
it is. And I just went back to yoga at the beginning of November. And it's been interesting because I forced myself to go to, excuse me for a second, restorative yoga.
Yes.
And it is so much harder to just lay there and do nothing than it is to do the poses and be super engaged and competitive. And it's real, I went to the class because I thought, oh, this will be easy. I'll get lots of rest. And I'm like, gosh, my mind won't clear. So it's interesting. It's much more challenging than the hardcore.
So yoga is one of my most favorite mirrors, in terms of working with people, because the way that you approach something is the way you approach everything. Right? Mm-hmm. The way you approach yoga, which challenges that type A warrior, kind of energy, to allow that receptive, feminine, quiet energy. And that, just in that little thing that you just shared, that tells me so much about where the work
needs to happen. Yeah. And it is. I'm a bull. Most of the time I'm a bull in a china shop. I'm persistent. I get it done. I'm action. And it's really hard for me to go into inaction.
Yeah.
So that can be a good thing.
There's a wonderful saying, in spiritual work, is from nothing comes something.
Yeah.
From nothing comes something. And for those of us, to be able to allow the nothingness to appear, okay, and then, and then the greater voice, the greater lessons, the greater, parts of your highest self begin to start to show up.
Oh, so great. You and I sat on a plane together for like 4 hours. We were supposed to be sleeping. We both were in the terminal in Tampa going, okay, we sat there for 2 hours. We're like, we're both going to sleep on the plane, and neither of us got a wink of sleep. We chatted the whole way. We were talking a lot about the author, coach, and speaker place where people say, I want to be seen. I want to be visible. I want you to see my work. And then they hide. And I actually called it passive aggressive. I'm not a therapist. You had a much better take on it than I did. I just think it's like, I want to be that, but I don't want to put any work. So that action part of me says loser. No, I'm just kidding. You had a really good perspective on it. I'd like you to share.
So I'm not remembering exactly that piece, but if I were you're asking me the question again, and all behavior has a positive intent. Okay, all behavior has a positive intent, including all these awful people that are doing the most awful things that we could ever think about. In their psyche, their behavior has a positive intent for them. Okay?
So would that be like, you and I have talked about this before, would that be like when we talk about people come into my group and they pay attention to everything, but they don't want to fix it because it serves them in some way?
It serves them in some way.
Okay,
and
so that's what the positive.
Exactly. They may or may not be aware of it, probably not. And it comes off frequently as, I'm lazy, or I'm not motivated, or I'm not this, or I'm not that, or, all the negative things. But again, because I've worked in this field for so many years, you just dig a little bit and pull away the judgment. Let's look at, really, what's the outcome? You say you want to do this, and yet you're not doing it. So let's look at what's behind that. And so the way I kind of work with it is I do the opposite. Let's just imagine that you're doing it, and then what comes up? Just like we just sat there with the fear. What comes up? What shows up? Well, I'm scared. Or, they might, why me? Or why should anybody listen to me? Or, all these stories that we've been told, okay, from early childhood, begin to start to surface. I'll give you another example. I had a client in one of my workshops. I did a hot seat. And so this gal was, I'll do it. And so her deal was she was starting a new business. And every time she thought about moving forward, this voice would come through, oh God, you're really going to do this, and you can't do this, and who are you, and all that kind of stuff. So I did the exact same exercise that I just described to her. I said, where do you feel it in your body? And she said, I feel it in my stomach. And I said, well, just sit with it for a minute. And she says, oh my God, that's my mother's voice. She was so critical.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So she had embedded, again, from childhood, as we do, unconsciously, her mother's voice. And that became what she thought was her voice. Well, the truth was, it really wasn't her voice.
Mm-hmm.
If we could put mom aside for a little bit, okay, and what do you really think? Well, I'm really good at this. So that's what, honestly, Juliet, has kept me so interested in this work for so many years, because every story is different. You know, there's only so many themes, but every, you know, when you and I talk, and your background, your history, your family, the things that you were told are unique to you and unique to your system. So you had siblings, you know, the same parents, they may have reacted one way, you reacted another way because of your characterological nature,
Mm-hmm.
and because of the experience and how the two impacted together.
Mm-hmm.
So what could be more interesting than your own story, your own history, your own system, your own, you know, to really become a student of how this body mind operates together. And when you put the time and the energy and the effort into it, you are a powerhouse of information about you, that no matter what comes at you, okay, you have a way to separate, you know, is that their stuff or is it mine?
Mm-hmm.
It becomes very simple, actually, because there's so much clearing that happens that energetically you're not holding all this other garbage, honestly. So the way that I look at healing and all this performance stuff, let's clear it out. Let's clear out the junk, okay, so that you have space. So that if you are under a lot of pressure, okay, because again, being under pressure, our most natural thing to do is to tighten up.
Mm-hmm.
The muscles tighten, okay, the mind shuts down, we get a little spinny, the heart starts racing, and we are not available.
That's true.
Okay, so that's the stress response, which is a natural response to something that we feel like we have no control over. Stress is the perceived amount of control that we think we have or we don't have. Perceived. Okay, so if it's perceived, I want to come back to how can I be in control? What's in my control? Right? So I have to work with my body so that my body is calm enough on a regular basis, so that when I ask more of myself, okay, I'm at a higher level because I can tolerate more stress. We call it the window of tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So our goal is to enhance this window of tolerance. Right? So stress comes along, okay, I've got all this space. And yes, you know, I might kind of lose it, but there's a lot that has to take me over the edge.
Right.
Right? So when we're performing, or when we're just being interviewed, or when we're on stage, or we're making a pitch, or we're doing any of those things, we want the body to be calm, because when the body is calm, the mind slows down. And when the mind slows down, we can think. We can insert thought. We're not just on automatic.
So interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Isn't it interesting? So to be a really great performer, there's a lot that goes into it in terms of practice and repetition and practice, because you're quieting down the left side of the brain, which is the chatter side, and the right side of the brain is opening up, which is your creative side, and which is where this muscle memory and, you know, things that are in your system are available to you.
Wow. Cool.
Isn't it cool stuff?
It is cool stuff. So
Yeah.
you have a free gift for us today too, don't you?
I do. I have the beginning of what you can begin to do to really begin to start to master the mind and the body. So it's 5 tips for peak performance. And for each one of the tips, so I deal with focus, relaxation, dealing with negative self-talk, how to visualize, and dealing with fear. So there's an exercise for each one of those. And you can find it on my website at my name, Tina Greenbaum, Green, like the color, B as in boy, AUM as in Mary, .com, tinagreenbaum.com. And if you scroll down on the home page, there's a thing that you can click and it will come to you.
A little button. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And,
okay. And Tina is inside of our community, our platform building community. So if you want to reach out to her there, you can either go to tinagreenbaum.com or just inside of our group, find her and flush her out and make an appointment and talk more about this.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Bye.
Bye.